Okay, we're live again. Oh my goodness. This
live
is
video will appear on Joe Riley. Perfect.
okay. It still says it's waiting for you to join. This is how not to do a Substack live. This is how not to do it. So yes.
You are the one viewer.
Or maybe I should have just done it for you. Anyway, I'm sure other people have to do this, don't they?
Yeah, of course it does. I mean, it's
Look, no one needs to join. We're just practicing.
this live video. Can you change it from everyone to me? You must be live there because you've now got 2 views.
Oh, okay. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry. We're really messing this up. Okay. Okay, I will. All right. Sorry, everyone, for my disastrous first time live. I'm Alice, and I was supposed to be having my friend Joe on, but unfortunately, I can't press the right button, or I don't know. I'm waiting for her to join. She's in the ether somewhere. So what we really wanted to talk about today was really introduce ourselves. We're sort of new to, as you can tell from Substack, and we just wanted to share, why we're here and how we're finding it and what we do in our lives. So basically, we were going to talk about journaling, which is a huge passion of mine. Basically, because it got me through lots of difficult times in my life, and I basically journaled for my life. I think it was back in 2014 when I had a sort of a life-changing experience. Oh, Joe, you've arrived! Amazing. So, miracles happen. Maybe we're just supposed to talk for a bit and then the person appears, like, oh my goodness. So I was just saying about my passion for journaling and how it really saved my life back in 2014 when I had a very shocking experience of a sudden divorce, losing my children, spiritual awakening. Can we have anything more? And then that was interpreted as as a mental breakdown because obviously I wasn't being normal. So a friend of mine told me to journal and write everything down you need to do and write how you feel and express yourself. And so basically I did that and I didn't stop writing. And I haven't stopped writing since, actually. And I'm finding Substack a really great place to write because I feel like I can just be myself. Obviously, I did write a book. I did share my memoir. I did 3 years ago. I wrote my story because I really wanted to share it because this happens to so many people, I mean, I'm not the only person to have had a small spiritual awakening. Some people have really big spiritual awakenings. And then in Western society, we go to, a hospital and get drugged. And, that's a whole other experience and trauma. So I wanted to sort of take away some of the shame of actually speaking about that. Because what I realized once I put out my book is all these people were telling me, this happened to me, this happened to me, happened to my mother, happened to my grandmother, And so it's obviously been happening for centuries and we haven't really changed the way how to manage somebody going through a life-changing experience. And currently we're all going through a life-changing experience globally. So many people are going to have, mental health problems and maybe spiritual awakenings too. I think it's on the cards. And so I just wanted to bring that up and in the course of time to share, how journaling and the kind of journaling I do. And and I'm sharing it in a book so people can have that. And I basically share my story, how I went from having a mental breakdown, being locked up, how I got out of there very quickly because I was journaling. And because I was journaling, it was centering me, it was supporting me. And obviously I looked very much more professional. People thought I worked there. I had my book and I was writing things, because they're writing things about you all the time, observing you. So I had my book and I was writing. And I think that actually gave me a lot of power. And I think it made people, the nurses and the doctors, psychiatrists, eventually they thought, oh, actually, yeah, she's all right. And she's just had acute stress. I know some of these places, I don't want to be controversial, but I know some of these places, some people want to go in these places to recover from their, difficult situation and have time out. But for me, it wasn't a good experience to have on top of what already happened to me. So, yeah, that's a bit about my story. But Joe, let's share your new Substack, Yes You, and maybe a little bit about what you do and, how we're supporting each other through our different experiences.
Thank you, Alice, for having me here. As always, it's an honor to be working with you and sharing this journey with you, my darling. So I'm a transformational coach and healer. So a lot of my work is actually working with the intelligence of the body. So I've realized through my journey that actually one of the foundations, and a lot of people don't really understand what it even means, is obviously nervous system regulation. Because I think when the nervous system is completely out of sync, we can't, no matter how much we try and think ourselves out of things, no matter how much we try and make sure things are normal on the outside, when the nervous system isn't regulated, nothing works, nothing functions. We don't sleep. Everything starts falling apart. We become triggered all the time, frustrated because we're so tired. We can't. So the whole thing. So I've really realized that I needed to understand what that meant. And by balancing the nervous system, everything else starts to fall in line. So, your health, mental health, we can allow then things that are situations and events like yours that have happened to you to be able to start to release them and transform them and move through them. But we have to be in a state where our nervous system can hold that for us as well.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking now, I mean, just like say anxiety.
Mm.
I live in Bali, by the way, if anyone wants to know. I've got these
I
beautiful
used to
trees
live
behind me.
there.
Joe used to live there. That's where we met in 2017 or 2018 on a sound healing
Mm.
course. Um, so, but what I realized I didn't even want to admit to myself is that actually I suffer from quite a lot of anxiety, all these last years. I could still function. We can still function through it, but
Mm.
we don't really come from a place of security,
Mm.
where it doesn't take much to sort of tip us over from anxiety to like being frozen into, oh, I can't make a
Mm.
decision on this. Like for me, it's like, where am I living? What am I doing with my life?
Mm.
Yes, I'm writing a book, but it's just like, I spent years of like, oh no, I can't put it out. It's like all this anxiety
Mm.
it prevents us from actually living the life and appreciating where we live and really affects our relationships, affects our whole being, like affects our sleep. It's just all encompassing.
Mm.
And I know that you can share some tips and tools that you used. I know that's what I share in my journal, but this is what you do. And I know obviously it comes to the breath, when we're connected to our breath,
Mm.
it
Well,
calms our nervous system.
I think, the breath is probably one of our most powerful medicines because it is our breath. It's our life force. It does really, if we don't breathe, if we stop breathing, we're dead. It's as simple as
Yeah.
that. But so many people overlook it because it's part of our body that it just does it kind of on its own. But if we learn to breathe properly and we learn to manipulate our breath, consciously, we really start to manipulate all the areas of our life. And one of the biggest ones is anxiety, depression, mental health, because once we are breathing properly, we start regulating. And then again, that's how I use a lot of my, to regulate people's nervous system is through the breath. So you can even do like an example if you are feeling really anxious at work or there's meetings or there's a lot of stress, just to actually, I say to some of my clients, just go and sit in the toilet, lock yourself away, for 3 minutes, just go, take a moment. If that's the only time you have space to give yourself, go and do it. And put 3 minutes on and just breathe, but breathe into your belly,
Mm.
make sure the breath's deep and full and slow the breath down because then you start balancing and the anxiety, starts to release a little bit, ease the anxiety. Then we actually find we have a lot more clarity to be able
Mm.
to manage the stress that's going on, say, in your workplace. And it's
Yeah.
just simple little breaths like that. It's just becoming conscious. I think the starting point is becoming very conscious and observing how we breathe. Because most
Mm.
of us breathe so short and shallow. And so it's very, which keeps our nervous system again in a fight to flight. But actually, if we
Yeah.
start to bring breath down into the belly, slowly, the body starts to relax. It starts to feel safe. it can actually then slow down. It can then start to go into rest and digest, which is where our bodies then can heal themselves.
Yes. And it's just like, what I do is I just stop, take a
Exactly.
seat. Obviously I've got all this beautiful greenery around me, and green is the most balancing, harmonizing color. I just try and stop and say, everything doesn't have to be done today.
Right.
Sometimes you get overwhelmed by all these things you've got to do, like learn how to do lives on Substack and learn all these new technical things, I'm quite technical. I'm quite, and I can look on the internet and find, do this, but, you actually have to actually do it,
Do it.
But there's a lot of things to do because, we're very creative people and we want to do all these things. What I do, I am,
Absolutely.
and if you're not coming from a place of, if you can't regulate yourself and be calm and, then it all becomes too much and then you end up doing
Yeah.
nothing. And I can definitely say that was me in the last 18 months. I felt very stuck. I was trying to put out this journal. I'd written it about 6 times. I didn't think it was good enough. Everyone does journals. Everyone does everything, and, I just had to say, okay, well, I'll just put it on the back burner for a while and I'll just, get through. Like, obviously, my mother died last year, sorry, a year ago. And so there's all these things, family things, and they all start piling up and then you just don't have any clarity. You're in this whirlwind of emotion and,
And I think
yeah.
that's the thing, is just what you're saying. We forget, life, we can't get rid of challenges
Mm,
in life. But so we're always going to have these things, like like your mom passing away. It's all of a sudden I did not expect it, and it does throw us off our center, and it does like kind of derail us, these situations. And life is challenging, but then if we can learn to how to manage these challenges differently, how to not be triggered, how to become more regulated, so that actually no matter what we're experiencing, we have more clarity and less chaos around how to manage these situations. Because otherwise it just becomes very chaotic and very overwhelming. And then we'd end up just self-sabotaging and not doing anything, to be honest.
exactly. And then relationships break down and life becomes a big mess and then we have to
Mm,
rebuild it. I mean, that's
exactly.
how I find about journaling. I mean, besides I get a lot of creative ideas, I often wake up and I've got all these things whirring in my head. It's like, oh, I need to write all that down, but it is very grounding. And, just the physical act of putting pen to paper. Because you're connecting, the right side of your brain, the opposite side of it. If you're left-handed or right-handed, I
Yeah.
guess, it's the opposite side of the brain. And it actually grounds you by writing. It like calms you. I mean, I often do some scribbling or little doodles. And,
Yeah.
it's like I'm really just focusing on that. And everything else, it just doesn't matter. I just take a bit of time out, a small amount of time, 10, 15 minutes, and also my doodles are not masterpieces. I don't even try. It's like releasing the judgment of
Mm,
what I'm doing, releasing, expectations. Because a lot of the reasons why we get disappointed and we get anxious is because we have ideas about how life should be, right?
mhm.
And it doesn't turn out like that. We're
No.
on this,
w-
like I say, this unknown journey. We don't know what will happen even today.
No.
Every day is different. And when we're always living in the future, we're always having these expectations and these goals to get
Expectations.
there and pushing ourselves. And, I should have been there by now, or this or whatever. Um, so yeah, it's we can be really hard on ourselves, and then that puts us into a state of not creating anything. So it's like really, building up some small tools and finding out what's right for you. But yes, connection to the breath. Um,
Absolutely.
Joe does a lovely reset breath technique, which you're giving away, aren't you?
Mm,
So, I
yes.
mean, people can use that. I mean, I listen to a lot of frequency music and I try and learn lots of instruments. So I have lots of instruments around me. So I usually pick one up and sort of strum my guitar or play my harmonium or something. And just doing that and singing and sounding, yes, because the voice is connected to everything, in
Mhm.
your body, to all the
Definitely.
cells in your body. And when you sing or sound or hum, you
Mm,
don't have to be a singer. It calms the nervous system. Because I know when I get out my guitar and I have about 4 chords, but I can make a song out of 2 And, I sing some songs that I've made, and I just sing them on strum guitar, and I just find it so therapeutic. And obviously, no one's listening, so that's really handy. The trees, they don't complain. They're encouraging. They're waving around, their leaves. Yeah, and it's just finding your own way where you can come back to center, and you can just forget about all this other stuff. The to-do list. I mean, crikey, I don't think I've ever got to the bottom of a to-do list. It's like as long as we're alive, there's things to do. And I know probably like a lot of people here, and I know for us, there's lots of things we want to do, and we're so sort of enthusiastic, but we have to sort of strategize and find out. No, you can't just put a book out. I was just going to put my journal out. No, you can't do that. You can't just put it out. You've got to tell people about it. You've got to talk about it. You've got to have a launch. And I'm like, no, I don't want to have a, okay, I'll launch it online. It's just like, there's so many things, especially when you're working for yourself. There's so many things that you need to learn, which is great. I mean, I love learning new things.
Yeah.
But it can get a lot. And so having these sort of techniques of finding for you what works.
And talking about these little techniques, like how would you, I mean, in your journal, are you teaching people how to journal? Because obviously I was never a big journaler, but as part of some of my journey, I did do a little bit of journaling because I found sometimes the answers came through as I was writing and expressing what I was going through. So, and I find sometimes it's a really clear, the answers are quite clear because you're not in your head, you're starting to put it down and you're reading it. And then you're like, oh, okay. And these things, all these dots start, coming together. So is that what your journal is? Do you have a lot?
I've got different ways of, I want people to find their own way. So I do have questions that people can answer if they like that kind of thing, or they want to try that. I mean, I suggest, just doing the spontaneous writing in the morning. And you can do that. It's called Morning Pages. It's well known. I can't remember the lady at the minute, but anyway, you just write everything for two pages. You don't judge it. You don't judge your writing. You don't have to read it again. You're just offloading. There's that way of doing it.
Yeah.
I think if you just set aside a bit of time and get into a little practice, whether it's your cup of tea, do some breath, do a little bit of breath while you're sitting there, center yourself, ground yourself. You can light a candle, have some incense. You can do little things that just create this sort of sacred space for yourself. It's self-love, really. It's giving yourself a bit of time.
Or even more than self-love on that point. I think for us to be able to even go through, if we're going through something that's an uncomfortable moment in life, an event or whatever, we need to feel safe. Our bodies we need to feel safe in order to move through things, to be able to allow the emotions and the everything. So I think creating that safe space is definitely a big part of it. Is no matter where it is, whether it's in the garden, like you said, with whatever, a candle, whatever it is to actually create a safe space where you can then drop into the body and then start listening to what's going on. Instead of feeling like you have to protect yourself from everything and everyone and you're always on guard, you can actually then really soften and
yes. Yeah, I mean, so sometimes, people say, oh, I can't write. I don't know what to write. So, I mean, I say write anything, whatever comes through, just write anything. And if you really can't write, do this kind of doodle technique where you just scribble some lines sort of like that on the page, and then you just draw inside of them. And it has a very kind of, and then you go, and then, sometimes, and we really notice, we can observe ourselves. Oh, that's not very good. Or you can't even do the lines nicely. You can sort of observe yourself, or you just go, oh, okay, I'm just playing here. I'm just releasing, because you've still got the pen on the paper. You're still connecting to your creative self, your white brain, and you're just drawing, and you're calming yourself by doing that action. And then, at the end, you get all sorts of like images that come through, like little faces or just patterns. And it's really just it's like taking you into a flow state. It's like, then you forget about it, think, oh, I just want to finish this. You can give yourself 15 minutes, or you can go back to it if you want. You can do whatever you like. It's really your choice, but it's just getting something down and doing something. So I have little meditations as well, just very short ones. I have a little meditation to start you journaling, just to just to stop for a minute and just to center yourself, close your eyes and just listen to my voice and, get that sort of, this is me time. This is time I'm taking out for myself to connect with myself. And you'll be absolutely surprised. A friend that was in Bali, she's living in India now. I taught her this little, because she said, I can't journal, I can't write at the moment. I just can't do it. And she was, in a transitional period of her life. And I said, well, okay, well, why don't you just do this little technique? I literally sort of showed her in 2 minutes. You just take a scribble on a page and then you just draw like circles or squares, color some in and da, da. And now she's doing them all the time. She said she still can't write. I spoke to her yesterday. Still can't write. So that's okay. How's your doodling going? Because, oh my God, I'm doodling all the time. I love it, and they're absolutely beautiful. So it's just sort of finding this flow of creativity, really.
And I think with like you said, it doesn't matter what kind, whether it's doodling or actually writing, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's just getting you out of your head. So if there's a lot of chaos going on, like just you talking, I can see it's just that it's taking your attention out of here and all trying to think of all these whatever's going on and actually just concentrating on something, becoming present in that moment and doodling or writing or whatever, you literally coming out of your head and you're creating space. So then when you come back into it, you can be like, oh, okay, I've got a bit more clarity to do whatever I need to do and move through. So I think, I think that's, wow.
And it connects you with your emotions, because the emotions is the things that we ignore. We just get on and do stuff. We've got a routine. I'm doing this today. I'm working. But actually we're not connected to our emotions. And our emotions are really powerful. Our emotions are a direction. They're giving us direction. They're signaling for us.
Yeah.
So I think when we stop and we doodle or we get some words on paper, we're actually really connecting to how we're feeling. It's like, oh, how do I feel now? And then, like the other day, I had sores going on next door. I mean, God, it was driving me crackers. I was supposed to be working. I couldn't. I went out. I was in such a bad mood. I was like, oh my God, I was observing myself. I was like, wow, you haven't been this grumpy for ages. What's going on with you? And I said, well, it's that noise, But I was really grumpy and I was just like, oh, so I went out, got myself a lovely coffee. And actually, it was a beetroot latte. I thought I'd try it. I'd never had one before.
They're really nice.
Pink. I know. I loved it. Anyway, I was sitting there. I was still a bit grumpy and I'm just exhausted. I was like, oh, what a wasted day. La, la, la. Anyway, I came home. And it was still going. I was like, you are kidding me. When is this ever going to stop? Anyway, I was just like, oh, it's not so loud. No, it's not so loud. And then I started writing on Substack. And then I started writing. And then I started writing and remembering. And that's another thing about when you journal, you can remember lovely memories you've had or traumatic memories or whatever the memories are. But they're coming to the forefront to anyway, this story came out when I had my spiritual awakening, and my lovely friend Martin was looking after me and his wife, and I was down in the countryside in Dorset, and he had a chainsaw, and he took me out, and he was cutting these hedges in the countryside, and I was thinking, you are nuts. I'm supposed to be, you're supposed to be looking after me. I'm the one that's had this spiritual awakening and need help, Anyway, then he got on a ladder and he's climbing out. I'm just thinking, oh no, now he's going to fall over and I'm going to feel guilty, So then I had my headphones on, my music, and then I was holding the ladder and I was thinking, how could he put me in this? How could he do this to you? But so it was really lovely because then I got to write about him and remember him because he died 3 years ago, I think it was now.
Yeah,
and I got to remember him, and it really cheered me up. So from having a sort of shitty day, I just thought, oh, but what a funny anecdote. I was thinking, oh my God, I can actually just even feel myself being there, seeing it all. And then I was dancing around in the field while I was waiting for him to sort of release the stress of the sound of a saw. I mean, I don't know if anyone else can bear the sound of that.
I agree with you.
It's really too much. But, so that's another thing that I love to do with my journaling is to actually honor people and honor myself, especially when it comes to grief. I think I could do a whole journal on grief, actually.
Yeah,
and ways that we can write letters to them and, share stuff that we can no longer share with them. But, it's my belief that they're still around us and they're still in connection with us, even if we can't
Absolutely.
necessarily speak to them. But I know that they're with us, just in a different realm. So yeah, I find that really powerful, and it's really helped. It's really helped my grief by writing, and then you end up writing poems and things,
Hugely.
and songs. I started writing songs a few years ago. And I recorded one. And, part of my honoring of my friend who died was learning how to play 3 chords on guitar, you know? So it's just like we become this our true creative being,
Yeah.
and, by writing or journaling, we actually get a lot of information. Like you said, you start writing about one thing, something else comes.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a nice technique that I learned a few years ago. Say if you're really stuck or you want to answer about something, you write it with your dominant hand, the question, and then you write the answer with your non-dominant hand.
Oh,
And
wow.
that's, yeah, sometimes you can't read your writing because it's really kind of difficult to
I
read with your
wouldn't
hand.
be able to
But
try.
also, yeah, but also it's a really good practice to try and write with your non-dominant hand, and then,
I'm going to
information
give it a
comes through. Do, yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, so journaling is, yeah, it's not just journaling,
No.
it's actually connecting to your soul and
Yeah.
to information and creativity. And I think that's great. I mean, sometimes we might have too much information, too much creativity, but yeah, it's a really good way of expressing and
Yeah.
really how we feel, because often, especially in Western society, we don't have time. Too busy working, too busy with this, with kids or whatever you have in your life, your partner, your husband, commitments to looking after other people. You don't have any time for yourself. And then you can very easily, like we were saying,
Yeah.
escalate and get stuck in patterns of depression, anxiety, and really living a life without sort of clarity, or being
Mm.
conscious of even your behavior, because we go into sort of, I don't know, spirals,
Mm.
downward spirals.
Mm.
And I like to think that journaling is a way of taking you into upward spirals and keeping you balanced. And, when we're creative and we're in flow of anything, whether it's knitting, crocheting, all of that stuff, I have tried. Not very
Well,
good, but I have
and I
tried.
And I think journaling, just listening to you talking about journaling, I think there's no right and wrong, which is really nice. So there's no expectation. You don't have to do it right. You can do it however. It doesn't matter. You can write what you want to write. I mean, even if it's one word or just releasing a frustration, or like you said, drawing pictures or doodling, whatever it is, like there's no right and wrong. And I think people put so much expectation on getting something right that when you have something
Yes.
that it doesn't matter,
Yes.
it even creates a little bit of freedom.
Absolute freedom. It's
Right.
total
Yeah,
freedom. I mean,
yeah, so
sometimes I just scribble on a page,
yeah, you see.
not very often, because I
Mm.
generally, I have a very kind of balanced life, but sometimes I actually just scribble on a page. And actually, sometimes I look at it after, oh, actually, it looks quite sweet, really. I'm sure there's got flowers in there, it's not all like, but yeah, we just have to find ways of really, yeah, expressing ourselves, and all
Mm,
emotions are okay. If we're
okay.
angry, write an angry letter, we often can be disappointed with ourselves and how our lives turned out. And expressing that allows you to move on. So when it's unexpressed, then it becomes into the body, and then you have neck ache, and you have all these different things that happen to you, which can happen anyway. But, I think if we're conscious of our emotions, we're conscious, therefore, then we're conscious of our relationships and how we speak to others. And also, more importantly, how we speak to ourselves, because we're a reflection of everything around us. So when we
Absolutely.
can be kind to ourselves and compassionate to ourselves, then we can have more compassion and love for everyone else, and more understanding, because we don't all have to agree with everything. It's like, the way I journal, people would look at that and think, oh, Alice, that's a little rubbish. It really doesn't matter. It
Matter.
really doesn't matter. I mean, people might even say that about my journal, but you know what? I put my heart and soul into it. And that's what I learned in these last 10 years. And, that's why I want to share it, because I know it helped me, and it'd be kind of rude of me not to share it when
Mm.
I know so many people, will struggle, in life, but we just don't talk about it as well,
Mm. And just
especially
going back to,
emotions. Sorry, go on.
sorry, love, going back to one of the points you made about writing letters, I think it's a very powerful technique and tool for self-forgiveness, not necessarily writing about
Mm,
somebody else if they've been hurt, but actually forgiving yourself. But also doing it from a place of compassion and love. Like I say, even use that with my clients. I'm like, when they're super
mm,
angry and disappointed and they're beating themselves up and they're carrying a lot of guilt and shame, I'm like, write yourself a letter.
mm,
Just sit down and write all of the things that you want to release. Forgive, like who you need to forgive, who you've hurt, whatever it is, whatever you're carrying the guilt and shame about, release it on a
mm.
piece of paper and burn it. And I'm like, you
Yes,
don't have to give it to anyone, just burn it, because you're creating a space for self-forgiveness. And I think that's a
absolutely.
massive, massive way, an easier way for people to actually forgive themselves, because they find it super hard to forgive themselves most of the time.
Mm. And people carry that with them all their lives, right? So if you're
Exactly.
carrying shame and grief and guilt,
Mm, mm,
that is going out into your life. I mean, I was very aware of that when, all that rubbish happened to me 10 years ago or whenever it was,
mm,
12. I was like, oh my God, how am I going to get over this? No, I'm not going to get over it, but I'm going to use tools and I'm going to find ways of making something good out of it. Like sharing my story. I know that by sharing it, and I didn't want to share it because I was like, I don't want people to know what's happened to me. They're going to judge me for what my
mm.
decisions were or for what happened to me. And, hindsight is a wonderful thing. And obviously if I was doing that whole scenario again, I would have done things differently. But it's very hard. It's very hard when you're in it. And it's very hard along the way sometimes to actually ask for support and
Mm,
also get support from the right people. So another
mm.
thing I put in there is a circle of friends. And so it's like you do a circle, you put yourself in the middle and you have circles going around it. And then you put in those inner circles and then the outer circles who you can trust, you know,
Wow.
and who would have your back if tomorrow something disastrous happened? Who could you
Wow.
call upon to support you? Because
That's powerful.
I know that's like thinking in advance and might never happen. That's okay. But, we really have to feel who we trust because sometimes, the way, whether it's just a friend, that it's like, who do you share
Mm.
your, your inner self with,
Yeah.
because sometimes that can be just thrown back in your face for sharing your truth. And, a lot of people don't understand you or me, and haven't understood me because my experience was so big. People just say, "Oh, it's just, that's just, it's repelling to them because it's so unpleasant." And I could feel that. It's like, oh, okay, that's the kind of person you don't really want to talk about how you feel because I'm very much like wanting to be in my truth, because
Yeah.
that's something having realized back in
Well,
2014 that my life was a lie. I was like, well, I was searching for truth and how this could
mm.
happen to me, you
I
know?
think that's a topic you and I are definitely going to have to delve into on one of our lives, is being able to
Yes,
speak our truth, because I think it's very powerful. Um,
yes,
and I think so many of us don't do it. And it creates so much uncertainty and like dis-ease in the body because we're not speaking our truth. So yeah, I would love to go on to
exactly.
a topic with you about this on
Yeah,
one of our lives.
we definitely will. And it's actually about your personal truth. No one else has to agree with
Yes,
you. It's just your
absolutely.
personal truth, right? No one else is. And you're allowed to own that. And you can change it as well. And that's what I really like. It's like when I was living in the UK, I felt like we had to sort of have a kind of idea about things and then we had to stick to it. Whereas, it's very liberating. You can change what your truth is. It might be this one day, that's my truth, but actually it's having that flexibility to change. And I
And I
think
think
that's really key.
as we grow and evolve, our truth is going to change. It has to change because we change as,
Exactly.
as beings here. And, I think that, but being able to, and this is what I say to people, the truth, if you speak your truth, there's no right or wrong. It's just the truth. That's all it is.
Exactly.
It's the truth. And however people perceive it and choose to take it, it doesn't matter, because if you speak
Mm.
your truth, that's all it is.
Yes, and that's liberating you because the thing is when you don't speak your truth, that's when you become ill because you don't
Mm.
feel confident, you feel you'll be judged.
Yeah.
And like going back to my book, when I put it out, I was sort of thinking, "Oh my God, people are going to judge me." And I was like, but then I had this sort of eureka moment when I realized, "Oh, actually if people judge me about my book and what happened to me and this and that, then I realized, well, that is sorry, I forgot what I was going to say now. No, but that is not about me. That is not about me because I just put my truth of how I perceive what happened to me and sharing the story of something that happened, the way I saw it, because I was in it, right? I
Yeah.
can't be doing other people's opinions because I didn't know what they were. But actually, when you speak your truth and you put your truth out there, if people don't like it, that's fine. It's not for them. Great,
Yeah,
easy,
I
right?
can't wait to
I
delve.
don't have to take that. We don't have to take that. It's like, yeah, I like it, and I got something from that or not. And when they don't, that's fine. And actually, is the thing is, if somebody needs to tell you they don't like it, well, that's really their problem. So I
Absolutely.
realize the fear around that. Um, because being creative as well, there's a lot of fear about showing up to be creative, that people will judge you. And when they, like at school, we get judged and marked 9 out of 10, 5 out of 10, or whatever. So we've been judged all
Mhm.
our lives. So when we have the freedom to express ourselves, and to do that, then it's very liberating. And then we're in our truth, and then we're happy in ourselves because we're expressing our uniqueness, and we're
Absolutely.
expressing our gifts. And when it comes to art or writing or all these different things, everyone has an opinion, but who cares really? Who cares? Some people can be very opinionated. It's like, we don't really need to know.
Well,
It's
the truth
like it or not.
it doesn't actually make any difference because we
No,
have no control over them. And that's why
no.
this is going to be a very exciting topic for us to go into, actually, is speaking our
Okay,
truth. 'Cause I
fantastic. Well,
think
let's
I
do
think it's
that.
really powerful for people to
Mm,
understand how important it is. So yeah,
yeah.
I'd love to delve a bit deeper with you into this.
Okay, great. Well, should we round it up for today? We managed to do it. Well done. So I'm Alice. I am Alice at Substack, and Joe Riley is Yes
Thank you.
You. So
Yes.
connect with us, and if you have any questions or any topics that you might like to talk about, that would be great.
Uh,
So
Thank you,
have a
Daniel
beautiful
and
day.
Martine, for being here with us.
Yes, thank you. I don't know if
Thank
anyone
you.
was listening, but somebody
No,
might
they're
listen. Who knows?
we got two. So yeah. Thank you, my
Okay,
darling.
brilliant.
Lots of
Okay,
love.
lovely to see you.
Thank
Take care,
you.
lovely. Bye bye.
Bye.